Good evening. Good evening. Welcome. I'm Bryce Corrigan, Director of Undergraduate Studies at the SNF Agora Institute, and I want to welcome you on behalf of SNF Agora, as well as the Center for Leadership Education, to this second installment of Democracy for Design's Engineering a Civic Life series. Before we get to that, I want to take a moment to introduce SNF Agora and the minor in civic life. You may recognize the scene next to me up on the screen as the new coffee shop going into the community cube in the new SNF Agora Institute building. But now, today, the building is not just an architectural drawing, thankfully. It's real. I would know. And in the picture on the right, I'm actually sitting in an office in the building, in the adjoining office space where SNF Agora will make its future home. As Director of Undergraduate Studies for the minor in civic life at SNF Agora, I want to talk to you all for a moment here in the oral presentations course. You all being here at Hopkins, we know that you as students are passionate about cutting edge research. We know that in part, thanks to what you're learning here, you'll be the shapers of both your profession and the colleagues around you. In that vital work that you're doing, whatever your field here is at Whiting, you'll navigate a pluralism of perspectives. The minor in civic life focuses on the civic skills and knowledge that you, as the leaders of the future, will need to strengthen your organizations and your communities, and even, as tonight's theme foretells, to engineer a more resilient democracy. Were you to enroll in the minor in civic life, and all of you in this room could enroll if you wanted during your sophomore year, through your core courses and electives in the minor, you'd be taking the next steps to equip yourself with the essential skills and knowledge that can multiply your impact in any field and in your community. You'll learn such skills as how democratic institutions work, how to create effective and effectual policy, and perhaps most importantly, how to bridge divides and find the common ground that all of our organizations need and that is essential to the health of our civic sphere. And now I'm going to take myself off the screen as I showcase some of my colleagues and the courses that make all of this possible in the minor in civic life in a mere 17 credits. So for those students here who might be interested in the minor, that's actually just 3 core courses and 2 additional electives, because the oral presentations course would count as one of your electives. So our dynamic faculty and our vibrant community are teaching in the minor every year. And I'll mention the typical years that students would take the courses in the minor, but many paths in the minor are possible. And if you're interested in pursuing the minor, you should contact me, the Director of Undergraduate Studies, using my contact information on the website if you have further questions about the path that you would like to pursue. But were you to enroll in the minor next year as a sophomore, you would complete the minor in civic life course that's offered in the fall. That will be offered by Professor Consuelo Amat. The introduction to civic life highlights the foundational knowledge and skills for effective civic agency. Following that, after you've taken the intro course, you could then enroll in the Civic Life Seminar. Now, you could enroll in the seminar either your sophomore or your junior year. It's generally offered in the spring semester, and next year it will be offered by Professor Yuan Ang. The Civic Life Seminar brings students into the dynamic life of SNF Agora's community and academy workshops, where our community reflects on the active research and practice of its members. No matter whether students complete the seminar during their sophomore or their junior years, they then return in their final year in the program to complete the Civic Life Capstone, where they design a project under the guidance of SNF Agora faculty and fellows, and then present their unique contribution to their peers and to the community. And finally, I want to showcase a few of our great electives that are offered, just the ones next fall, but we have electives throughout the year, of course. So in the upper left, we have Professor Adam Levine teaching the Popular Science and Democracy course that will be offered in the fall. And in the lower left, we have Professor Leah Regur, who will again offer the Applied Practitioner Seminar for the Hopkins in DC program. And there she is on the SAIS campus. As shown on the right, we'll have quite a few other electives offered at the SNF Agora by SNF Agora faculty. So for example, we have an AI-focused course taught by Professor Hyman in the fall, and actually there's another AI-focused course taught by Professor Henry Farrell in the spring. We have several courses taught by our fellows, and those include practitioners of media, our dissident in residence, our artist in residence, and distinguished public servants. To be clear, though, there are over 100 total courses from across the university that are approved electives, including this oral presentations course. And all of those courses will be listed during registration should you choose to enroll in the minor so that you could consider taking an elective course. Please don't hesitate to sign up for SNF Agora's mailing list tonight at our table on the way out if you haven't already. That way you can stay in touch with us and learn about upcoming events at SNF Agora. You can also note interest on that sign up in the minor in civic life if you want to receive further communications about this program. I'll also mention that there's an 8-week SOL course, a 1-credit course called Civics, Power and Democracy in Action by SNF Agora's visiting artist in residence, Nigel Samaj. And that's actually, that starts after spring break. So if you want to enroll in that, you should think about doing that now. So now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dean Michael Falk, who will introduce tonight's keynote speaker.
Thanks, Bryce.
That was impressive.
So greetings, I'm Michael Falk. I'm the Vice Dean for Undergraduate Education in the Whiting School of Engineering. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Senator Ben Cardin, who is a distinguished fellow with the SNF Agora Institute at the Krieger School of Arts and Sciences and the Foreign Policy Institute at the School of Advanced International Studies. Senator Cardin grew up here in Baltimore and attended City College High School right up the road from our campus. He was elected to the Maryland House of Delegates while still a law student at the University of Maryland here in the city of Baltimore. Cardin went on to become the Speaker of the House of Delegates, a 10-term U.S. representative for the 3rd District of Maryland, and a 3-term U.S. Senator. That's an impressive record of service to Marylanders and to the people of the United States. This man has never lost an election in 58 years. More importantly, in thinking about the theme of this lecture series, Engineering a Civic Life, I want to highlight just a few of Senator Cardin's many achievements. So if I can manage to turn my page. Let's see. So Senator Cardin shored up our basic freedoms by establishing expectations that governments should be held accountable for gross human rights abuses. Throughout his time in the Senate, Cardin was a member of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee and is either as its ranking member or its chair in 3 Congresses. So Senator Cardin worked toward a legal framework for punishing foreign officials responsible for corruption and heinous crimes in response to the persecution and extrajudicial execution of Sergei Magnitsky. Magnitsky was a Russian tax lawyer and auditor who had exposed fraud by Russian government officials. After testifying against these officials, Magnitsky was arrested and subsequently murdered 8 days before he would have had to be released or brought to trial. Outraged by this extrajudicial execution, Senator Cardin shepherded passage of the Global Magnitsky Act, which codified a U.S. sanctions framework for targeting such abuses worldwide. This act became a key tool for human rights enforcement emulated by Canada, the UK, and the EU. In addition, Senator Cardin helped shape and expand Children's Health Insurance Plan, a key underpinning of how we support children's healthcare in this country. He later ushered in the development of the Paycheck Protection Program as part of the federal response to the unprecedented disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic. After completing his third term in 2025, Senator Cardin's dedication to public service did not stop. He and Myrna Cardin, his wife, joined with Towson University to found the Ben and Myrna Cardin Center for Civic Engagement and Civil Discourse. And now we are so very lucky to have this distinguished statesman here at Johns Hopkins as a distinguished senior fellow. So, as I was saying, Senator Cardin joins us tonight as part of our Democracy by Design, Engineering a Civic Life lecture series. This is a project co-sponsored by SNF Agora and the Whiting School of Engineering Center for Leadership Education. This series explores the crucial relationship between engineering and civic engagement, emphasizing how engineering practices can improve democratic processes and, in turn, how democratic ideals inform responsible engineering. Without further ado, here is Senator Cardin. Thank you again for being here tonight and sharing your thoughts about how we can all strengthen the foundations of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Paul, thank you very much for that very generous introduction. There's one thing, when I was a U.S. Senator, I never got that type of an introduction. So thank you very much. And I really thank Johns Hopkins for this opportunity for me to be associated as a distinguished senior fellow. I think about how fortunate I am. Served 58 years in elected office and made the decision voluntarily not to seek re-election. If I sought re-election and was successful, I'd be in Washington right now. I'm so much happier being right here. So I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I love our country. I love the legislative branch of government. I've had incredible opportunities, and maybe we'll talk about some of those this evening. But it was time. And I regret that often elected officials do not recognize when it's time for other people to step forward in a visible elected office. So I come here tonight to first say thank you for being here, for being interested in civic engagement and how you can impact the policies of our country. I looked at the definition of an engineer: applying scientific, mathematical, and creative principles to design, build, and maintain complex systems, structures, and technologies. Well, clearly our government is a complex system. And God knows we need creative principles and solutions. We need you to help us figure out how our democracy will survive. Because democracies are not just going to survive without your participation. Author Alan Drury, famous author of Advise and Consent, said, democracy is the most fragile thing in the world. So we need to pay attention. And yes, I want you all to be, if you're in engineering school, the best engineer, get all the training you need and do your creative work, design, or how you use that education. But you also want to live in a community that's safe. You want to live in a community that has clean air and clean water, has good schools, provides opportunities for all. And unless you get engaged, unless you understand civic education, unless you can be engaged in the policies, you might build a great building, but if it isn't in a good city, it's not going to make a lot of difference. And those responsibilities go to the communities beyond just Baltimore, and beyond just Maryland, and beyond just the United States. We are global citizens, and we all have a responsibility to get engaged to make our systems better for all. Now, the status of democracy today is concerning. If you look at Freedom House's definitions of what the democratic state is, it's been 15 consecutive years of decline of democratic states around the world. Don't just blame Donald Trump. We've had a major decline of democracy now for over 15 years. So take a look at some of the specifics. America When the Iron Curtain fell and we're emerging countries, I was in the United States Congress, and representatives from other countries would come in and ask me how we developed our democracy, because they wanted to be a democracy just like the United States of America. But I told them there's a couple areas I would not pattern your system after us. And one of those is, do we have free and fair elections in this country? Do you want to run for the United States Senate? Do you have a couple $100 million in your bank account in order to do that? The Senate race in Texas will easily cost a couple $100 million. Is that free and fair elections? New York Times just ran an article this past week that 19% of all money contributed in political campaigns in 2024 came from billionaires. Billionaires. And they were giving contributions to individual candidates in excess of $100 million. Is that free and fair elections? The way that we use redistricting and tried to carve up in order to win a partisan office, is that free and fair elections? So, and if you don't have free and fair elections, it's hard to say that you're a democracy. And then the freedom of press. Do we really have freedom of press? Where do you get your information today? It's a challenge. The president calls the press the enemy of the state. You got social media that pretends to be reporters. It's hard to get original source information. You use AI. AI is wonderful. Not knocking AI, but that's not original source information. Do you really have independent information today? And then you have to sort through the intentional misinformation that is put out there by our leaders in order to make a point. Disinformation is now accepted in American politics as being acceptable. To me, that's not a healthy democracy. If you can't get to the facts, if you can't get to where we are as a basis of information. And then the rule of law. I am embarrassed about how we treat people in this country. It's not the values that America stands for. People being taken off the streets without due process, arbitrary detentions. That's not the United States. That's not our democracy. We got to change that. And then the checks and balances in our system. Framers of our Constitution recognize that power is abusive. We grew out of the monarchies of Europe, and we recognize that power corrupts. So they put the Bill of Rights out there. They put a Constitution out there. The Constitution was there to protect you against the abuse of power of the president, Congress, big business. That's what the Constitution's there to protect you. But look what's happened. Now, we can debate the merits of the war in Iran, and maybe we'll have a chance to do that during the question and answer period. But the framers recognized that one person, the president of the United States, should not be able to put America into war. So the framers intentionally put the responsibility on Congress before America could enter a war. Why did they do that? Because the framers understood wars are not popular. You've got to have popular support if you're going to have a sustainable effort by our military. You've got to build the case before we start shooting guns. And that was the purpose for that. And we've modified that with what's known as the War Powers Act that allows the president to introduce troops in an emergency situation for a limited period of time after notification to Congress. Well, we're in war right now. America's engaged in a war in Iran. It has not been a declaration of war by Congress, nor Congress passing an authorization for use of military force under the War Powers Act, violating the Constitution. Where is the protection that we have? The United States does not do things alone. We're part of the United Nations. We're part of treaties that have been passed. The UN treaty specifically states that you're not allowed to violate the sovereignty of another country by your military unless one of three things occur. You're invited by the country to come in, the United Nations has passed a Security Council resolution, or you're an immediate threat and you need to do it for self-defense. I don't believe any of those were present when President Trump ordered our troops into Iran. So I don't want to debate right now the merits of whether we should be there or not from the point of view of the repressive regime, because we can get into that debate. But I am telling you that our constitutional protections are really in jeopardy today on balance of power. Justice Brown Jackson just commented this past week. Supreme Court has this open session where the justice, along with Justice Kavanaugh, was just debating what's going on. And Justice Brown Jackson noted that the Supreme Court has taken about 25 cases of the president under the emergency docket, so that the president could nullify actions unilaterally, not by Congress. Congress is the policy arm of government. President executes the law. President executed laws changing things, banning transgenders from serving in the military, dismissing heads of independent agencies, even though they had protection under statute. And the justice recognized that this is Congress not taking its responsibilities and checks and balances, and the president taking the power. Now, Justice Kavanaugh made an interesting observation. He said, Congress should have acted in these areas. And he's right. Congress should have passed an immigration law by now. Congress should have passed laws dealing with tariffs. Congress should have done a lot of things. And it's not just President Trump. The presidents for the last 50 years have been doing things by executive order because Congress has not acted. But it's abuse of our Constitution. I say this all, look at the appropriation process. That's the one thing that everyone agrees is Congress. But no, not this president. He doesn't spend the money that Congress appropriates, and he spends money that's not appropriated by Congress. Our Constitution needs your attention. So my point to you is this. John F. Kennedy said, no democracy can be stronger than the will of the citizens to direct its affairs. You are our citizens. You need to get engaged. You need to make sure that these protections are there for future generations. It's up to you. You need to be an effective engager, an effective civic engagement. So what are the core points of effective civic engagement? And by the way, I thought the presentation you gave was wonderful. I could sit down, the slide on what you have to do, it's perfect. But the first thing is you got to be informed. That's not easy. John Adams said liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among its people. So as we said, we want you to be educated and trained in the field that you're going to be your vocation. But you also need to be knowledgeable on what has happened. You need to know history. You need to learn the lessons from history. Learn from the mistakes that we made. Learn about how people who came before us were able to get things done. It's been a long path. We've gotten through slavery and civil war and the empowerment of women to vote and the civil rights struggles. How do we do that? Learn from history. Learn civic education. Learn economics. So you have a basic understanding. Understand the value of our arts and how it communicates. Unfortunately, today, with all the attention on STEM, we find that general education is suffering. And more college students are concentrating so much in their field of need for their profession that they're sacrificing general knowledge. One of the reasons I was proud to be associated with Johns Hopkins is that you're doing something about it here. The introductory courses that you take are aimed for you to be knowledgeable so that you can make a difference in our community. That's very important. And then, I've got to impress upon you the need for civil discourse. This is hard. You got to respect people with different views. You got to learn how to listen. It's tough when you're in a debate to listen. It's tough when people are screaming to be able to listen. You got to figure out a way to engage people with different views, bring our nation together. Dr. King told us all that we can learn from the brothers, and I'll add in sisters, who we call our opponents. We can learn from each other, and we can get things done. If you don't have when dialogue falters on college campuses, violence and incivility will rise. We've got to have civil discussions. We've got to figure out a way to have these debates. And again, I think you're at a campus that encourages that. Take advantage of it. Now I'll talk a little bit about the importance of leadership. Leaders make a difference. Dr. King said each of us can be great because each one of us can serve. Let me just give you a couple of examples here, because I think leaders stand up for doing the right thing even when it's not popular. My hero is John McCain. John McCain, in a 2008 campaign at a town hall meeting, running against Barack Obama, someone in the town hall stood up and asked John McCain, how can we allow a Muslim non-American to run for president of the United States? Now, John McCain, this is close to the elections, stood up and said, ma'am, I just want to correct you. Barack Obama is an American, he's Christian, he's a good person. We just happen to disagree on issues. But he's a good person, qualified to be running for president of the United States. That's a leader that will stand up and make sure that that type of misinformation doesn't get any oxygen. Think about today. Are our leaders telling us the truth? Are our leaders admitting when they make a mistake? The United States military made a mistake in Iran and bombed a school. They didn't mean to do it. Admit it. Don't try to say, well, probably it was an Iranian bomb that went astray, because that'll add to the conspiracy theories. Leaders acknowledge things that are not popular at times in order to advance our principles. And the U.S. leadership has been indispensable in this world. Prior to World War II, America were isolationist. We said, you know, we're so far away from Europe. Why do we have to bother about what's going on in the wars over there? And we don't even know where Asia is located. So we'll just be concerned about ourselves. That was the attitude in America. And then as Nazis were, as Hitler was expanding, and it became obvious that Europe could fall, the United States changed course. And our military entered World War II and we defeated Hitler. But we didn't stop there. Immediately after, the U.S. leadership set up the Nuremberg trials. The Nuremberg trials were revolutionary for the time. The sovereignty of a state demands that it makes its own decisions on accountability of its citizens. You have no right to tell another country what to do about their own citizens. We said no to that there are international rules here, international human rights. And we're going to hold the perpetrators of these atrocities accountable criminally under an international tribunal. America started value-based foreign policy. The Marshall Plan, 1948, using your tax dollars to rebuild the countries that were our enemies, Japan and Germany. Your tax dollars rebuilt Europe. Why? Because it was the values that we thought were important. When I think about America's contributions to the world, I think about President Bush and the PEPFAR program. Before PEPFAR was passed, HIV/AIDS was a death sentence in the global community. People who had tested positive were isolated, like leprosy. The United States decided to do something about that. Not because we could take care of the problem ourselves, the United States. We didn't have a major problem like some of the other places in the world. But we decided that we are all citizens of the world. And PEPFAR changed the landscape. No longer is HIV/AIDS a death sentence. We solved that problems. I appreciate the Dean mentioning the Magnitsky sanctions. The Magnitsky sanctions, the U.S. took the leadership to say that if you violate someone's rights, you're corrupt, and your country doesn't hold you accountable, we will hold you accountable. We will not let you visit our country. or use our banking system. You see, the Russian oligarchs don't want to keep their money in rubles. They want to keep them in dollars. We prevented that. And they want to visit their children who are attending Hopkins. They'd like to come here to the United States. We said, no, you're not going to come to the United States to visit your children. And it got to them. And it made a huge difference on human rights, and human rights defenders were protected. And as Dean pointed out, when the United States leads, the world follows. Europe, Canada, Asia have adopted the Magnitsky sanctions. This is now the global standard. We did the same thing on ending trafficking in persons, modern day slavery. US led by saying, if you don't do everything you need to do to stop human trafficking, whether you're a country that is a transit country or an origin country or a destination country, we're going to block you from doing business with us. We're not going to be able to do trade with us. We're going to isolate you. Now, that hurts our economy, but we stand up for principles. This is value-based. This is America's gift. I gave you many, many other examples of this, but we said we weren't going to do this alone. We do it in alliances. America doesn't act by itself. NATO, one of the most successful security alliances ever. We do it in alliances. United Nations, Sustainable Development Goals. Read them, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals under the United Nations. US leadership. It's an international commitment to end poverty, that every person in the world should have clean water and clean air. Every person should be able to go to a quality school. These are goals, international goals, not because we need it for America. It's because we're citizens of the world. We are these are our values. These are our democratic rooted values that America promotes. I could talk a lot about the climate talks, and I was involved in several of them. I led delegations to it. US leadership under Barack Obama brought the international community together to deal with climate in the Paris agreements. We talk about the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Helsinki Commission. I served on as chairman for many years, promoting human rights. This is what America was known for. The question is, are we reaching another flex point in America's foreign policy? Are we committed to continue value-based foreign policy, or are we going to go to transactional-based foreign policy? What's in it for us? I hope that's not the case. But when you take a look at what's happening today around the world, you see more and more countries turning towards transactional foreign policy. What's in it for us? That's what autocratic countries do. That's what repressive regimes do. And they enforce it through corruption and force. That should not be the United States of America. We were better than that. So, civic engagement, you need to understand leadership and the difference it makes. But you also have to be willing to compromise. And this is a tough one, people. You got to be willing to sit down and work out an agreement. All the bills that you mentioned, the dean mentioned, I had a Republican co-sponsor on those bills. Magnitsky, John McCain was my co-sponsor. He was a strong believer in human rights. We got that done. Paycheck protection program, here it is. The economy is closed down overnight because of COVID. Small businesses could not survive more than a couple weeks with the economy closed. We would have lost our small businesses in this country. Congress had to act quickly. I was the senior Democrat on the Small Business Committee. The senior Republican was a guy named Marco Rubio. You may have heard his name before. Not the easiest person in the world to work with. I don't trust private banks in underserved communities. So I wanted the money to go out through government so we can make sure it gets to the communities that don't have banking, where a small business doesn't have established banking relations. That was a non-starter for the Republicans. The Republicans would not include nonprofits. I was a strong believer that nonprofits are just as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable, than for-profit small companies. We compromised. We put out most of the money through private banks, but we got some money put out through CDFIs, community development financial institutions that serve in underserved communities. Nonprofits qualify, but there was this additional oversight for nonprofits. We compromised and we got it done in a matter of 2 weeks. And we saved our economy. That's how you get things done. I can give you more and more examples of how this happened, how we're able to get things done. So I guess I want to just tell you that if you do it that way, there's another advantage to this. Your policy will stand the test of time. I'll give you one more example, and then we'll sort of welcome your questions. One of the great accomplishments under the Obama administration was the passage of the Affordable Care Act. It was a great accomplishment, absolutely. And it was a compromise. Why was it a compromise? As you may know, the far left believes in a national health insurance system or Medicare for all. It didn't particularly like the Affordable Care Act. The far right hated the Affordable Care Act because they don't want government involved. They would like to get rid of Medicaid and Medicare if they could. It was a compromise built on the current system so that we had affordable health care. But there was a leadership failure in the passage of the Affordable Care Act. I'm not blaming the Democrats. I'm not blaming the Republicans, but I am blaming our leaders on both sides of the aisle. The Democrats had to pass it through a process known as reconciliation, which means it was passed with 100% Democratic support. Not one Republican voted for it. What did that mean? We got it done. It's the law of the land. But the Republicans have no ownership in the program. And now when we're on the ropes, we have to extend the subsidies or it's going to fail. Republicans aren't interested in doing that because they weren't included in the passage of the bill. Failure of leadership. Failure of leadership. Chesapeake Bay program. I've worked very hard to make sure we had bipartisan support for the Chesapeake Bay program. Senator Capito from West Virginia, Republican, helps me on this. Donald Trump becomes president. Donald Trump won. Zeroes out the Chesapeake Bay program. The Congress of the United States increases the federal share in the Chesapeake Bay program. Why? Because we had bipartisan buy-in and support for it. And we had compromised it in order to get there. So my message to you, you've got to be willing to figure out what you can get done and then work together to get it done. Let me just end on a quote from Frank Bruni, who's one of my favorite reporters. Frank Bruni said that hope is not an option, it's an obligation. We all have a responsibility to make sure our country does well, that we get back on track or we move ahead in progress, that we protect our democratic institutions against the abuse of power and protect individual rights. You know, in my lifetime, I've seen some amazing things happen that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. I went through Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin when Berlin was a divided city. When they harassed me when I went through the checkpoint. I literally went back and helped knock down the wall. I have a piece of it in my home. And I've seen Berlin as a unified city. I saw Barack Obama become president of the United States, something I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And here I am, a grandson of Eastern European immigrants, a product of the Baltimore City public schools, and he became a United States senator. This is a great country. Dream big. We can get back where we need to be. Your dreams can come true. Take advantage of what you have here at Hopkins, the opportunities that are given to you. But give back by helping us make our community stronger, fairer, healthier, cleaner, more peaceful. You can do it. You can make a difference. Do it as an individual, do it with others, but don't sit on the sidelines. We need you. And you have the opportunities here at Hopkins to become leaders to make a difference. I'm honored to be associated with Hopkins. I'm honored to be here today. I look forward to working with you so our country can become even better and greater than we are today. Thank you. Now, We had time for some friendly questions. Yes.
Back in 2024.
Oh.
And although I'm from Florida, I wrote my entire application about your wonderful leadership. And one of the most notable moments of your entire career was working extensively to restore voter rights for prisoners who were incarcerated and now free from prison. And my question is, with the current political climate, Save America Act, and efforts to push identification at the ballot, how do you think this affects democracy, either positively and negatively, or why?
Well, thank you for all that. Thank you for leading up. As I said earlier, to me, free and fair elections are the cornerstone of a democracy. And we have challenges today. We have challenges that I've already spelled out: the cost of elections, redistricting. I could have added that the people of the District of Columbia don't have a voting representative in the Congress. They're being disenfranchised. That's not what a democracy does. And democracy allows all eligible people the opportunity to vote without any harassment. We don't do that here in America. We still have the remnants of the Jim Crow laws. Many of the southern states in this country have disenfranchised a significant percentages of the black males because they were convicted of what they called a felony and lifetime prohibition from voting. That's ridiculous. That's an attempt to disenfranchise a group of people that the power structure felt might vote for their opponents. So these integrity laws are going after a problem that does not exist. It's going to make it more difficult for people to vote. And people who are franchised are not going to have that opportunity. We should make it easier, not more difficult. Now, I want to tell you something. I've never missed an opportunity to vote. First time I voted, this is a long, long time ago, so this might not seem like a lot of money, but it was a lot of money back then. It cost me $30 to vote. I had to get 3 notary certificates from applications. Each one was $10 a piece. Now, I spent that $30 to vote because I was in college and I wanted to get my vote in at that time. That was a poll tax back then. But I voted because that's how important it was to me. I don't understand why anyone would not vote. I just don't understand it. It makes such a difference. This is your country. You've got to participate in it. And voting is the easiest way to participate. It's not you got to go beyond voting. You got to get engaged. So I'm opposed to all these efforts to make it more difficult. There is a minimal amount of fraud in our system. The number of people who will be disenfranchised that are legitimate voters far exceed the number of fraud cases you may stop by any of these laws that are being suggested. Whoever has the mics, I see hands.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline. I was one of your interns in the beginning of summer 2023. And I actually had a question about voting, but I wanted to ask, how can we work across the aisle to sort of defeat these efforts to limit and restrict voting in a time when things are so polarized?
Right. Times are changing. I always have had friends on the Republican side of the aisle. I worked with Rob Portman from Ohio on pension issues. I've worked with Roger Wicker from Mississippi on anti-corruption issues. Todd Young from Indiana on human rights issues. So it's never been a problem for me. And if I was still in the Senate, we'd still be doing that work together. The challenge you have is this, particularly with Donald Trump zeroing in on people who in his own party that he thinks are being disloyal to him personally. Primaries are becoming very difficult for independent senators. Take John Cornyn of Texas. John Cornyn of Texas is not a moderate. He's a conservative. He's a loyal Republican. He's very difficult to get on any bipartisan vote, but occasionally you can. He's worked with us on gun safety issues. God bless him for that. He's worked on us on judicial appointments, which I particularly appreciate because some of our Maryland judges he helped me get through. So he's a reasonable person. I'd rather see a Democrat in that seat, but he's a reasonable person. Paxton, who's running against him, is an extremist. And and John Cornyn might lose his seat. I don't know what Donald Trump's going to end up doing here. So my point is this: we should reward people who come together to govern and recognize you govern by working with people from the other party. Instead, our primaries are penalizing people that do that, both Democrats and Republican primaries. So I have another bit of advice for you all. Not only do I want you to vote, I want you to register to vote, obviously. But I ask you to register in one of the two major political parties, because our political parties are becoming too extreme in America. We need to get more moderates into our party. I don't mean moderates from, I think my views are pretty progressive. But I do believe in governing. I do believe in working across party line. I do believe you got to listen to people who disagree with. And by the way, it hasn't hurt me politically. I've been able to survive. The one thing I've learned, you tell the people of your constituency how you really feel. You open up with them, be honest. They're tolerant. They may not agree with you. Some may not vote for you, but they're not going to be anxious to defeat you in the polls. So work together. We got to do it.
Hello. I'm a STEM student, so I've never interned with you before, but
there's always a chance. You never know.
But I do have a question. In your talk, you mentioned that the U.S. Involvement in foreign affairs has kind of shifted from being isolationist to being more values based, right? I was wondering, in recent years, a major argument for limiting America's role abroad has been financial. I think the America First doctrine is billions are being spent abroad. Maybe we should be spending that money building American infrastructure, building American values and stuff like that. So
is that a tornado?
So I was wondering, from your perspective, in an increasingly multipolar world like this, where do you really draw the line between global leadership and this overextension that people are talking about?
Right. I'm for America. I rooted for every one of our Americans during the Olympics. I wanted them to win. I'm for the Baltimore Ravens against whatever team they're playing against. So I'm for our home team. My responsibility to the people, when I was in the Senate, to the people of Maryland and this nation. And that's my priority. I want to protect their economy and opportunity. I want to make sure they have good schools. I want to make sure they have good, clean environment. I want to make sure that they're safe. I want to make sure they have everything they need. But I also have an opportunity to make the world a better place, which, by the way, this is not the reason I do it. It may come back to help us directly. It was General Mattis who said, General Mattis was the Secretary of Defense and also the chair of the Joint Chiefs, a distinguished general. He said, if you don't give the State Department the money for international affairs, you better give me 5 times that amount of soldiers and guns. So our engagement globally can make the world safer and less need for us to use military, can create markets so we can have more economic activity. It may make a cleaner environment, doesn't know any border, makes our air cleaner. There are economic reasons and self-interest for us to get engaged globally with our values. But that's not the reason we do it. The reason we do it is that's who we are. They're the values we believe in. Now, we spend about $35 out of every $100 of tax dollars you give us for our military. And that's about to go up. We spend 50 cents, less than 50 cents, of every $100 you give us on our international activities, our soft power. Now, if I had that 50 cents, could I solve the problems in Baltimore on good schools and on opportunities and housing? And the answer is no, I couldn't. It's not enough money. So it's not going to make a major difference in us dealing with the challenges we have. We got to deal with those challenges. We got to figure out how to get more resources into those programs. But it's not our participation globally that's making that more difficult. It's not. So again, this is facts, knowledge. People have to understand this. It's money that we need to invest. And by the way, one more reason. If we don't do it, someone else will. I was in South America not too long ago, and I can tell you, China's there with their investments where America is not. China's making a lot of friends. There's a lot of opportunities for China with minerals and materials and trade that we're losing out on. So it's in our interest to do this, but we have to explain it to our constituents. And if you do it, guess what? They're going to support what we're doing. They'll support our international events. But if you tell them, you say, do you think we should spend money on somebody halfway around the world, or should we take care of the homeless here in Baltimore? They'll say, take care of the homeless in Baltimore. Are you for America first, or should we help other countries? America first, I'm for. But if you show them the faces of the people we want to help, if you show them how much resources it takes for us to make a real difference there, when you show them the lives we saved on HIV/AIDS, when you show them the babies that are going to be saved as a result of what we're doing, they're with us. We got to make that case. And unfortunately, our leaders are not making that case today. Yes.
Senator, I'm also not one of your interns. So at the very beginning of President Trump's term, he started a crackdown on law firms and institutions that he saw as contrary to his interests. What was frightening to see was that a lot of these institutions went along with what the president was demanding. As a citizen, we sometimes wear multiple hats. One of those hats can be as a member of an institution like Johns Hopkins. How should we stand up to autocracy or submitting to autocracy when we see it and we're a citizen? Moving into kind of your greater idea of civic engagement.
I hope you're not using as a comparison Donald Trump with Ron Daniels, because that's not the comparison you're making. Look, Donald Trump has weaponized politics in America. He's used disinformation. He's encouraged corruption. He's encouraged hate. He's given oxygen to discrimination. All that is what you don't want to see in a leader in our country. So to me, he acts as a bully, and he backs it up with the power of his office. And that's not what America's about. The courts have to stand up to him, and Congress has to stand up to him, and the American people have to stand up to him and say, we won't take that. Now, if you have a circumstance on campus, or you have a circumstance where you want to be heard, I hope there's ways in which you can get that point across. My understanding is you have those opportunities here. So take advantage of them. It's a lot easier if you have other people with you. If you work with a coalition of people. It's also a lot easier if you're doing it in a respectful manner rather than a threatening manner. If you are doing it in a way that takes away the rights of others, there's not going to be as much sympathy to the point that you're trying to bring out. Civility is absolutely essential, but you have the right to be heard by the powers to be, whether the powers are the mayor of Baltimore, the governor of Maryland, or the president of Johns Hopkins.
Hello, sir. My name is Ren, and I'm from Idaho, which in the latest 2024 election was won by President Trump with a 37-point margin. Because of this, many friends and colleagues that I know refuse to even vote Democratic because they deem it useless and have no effect on influencing the political state. Because of this, do you believe that, or have any inclination that the Electoral College fails or disencourages true democracy, and that we should transition to a popular or ranked vote?
Yeah, I would think a popular vote would be a fair way to elect the president of the United States rather than the Electoral College. But one of the points I will stress, I didn't stress enough in my formal remarks, you got to know what's possible in the world, what you can get done, what you can't get done. You're not going to be able to change the Electoral College system. It's just the numbers will not allow that to happen. So you can't get that passed. But I do think it's not the right way to do it. So there's some other ways we can get around that by having a national, the same day nationally when every state votes. That would be helpful on primaries so that we nominate the president our presidential candidates without one state having an advantage over other states. I think that all would be helpful ways that we could minimize some of the downside of our system. As you know, this was the great compromise that formed the United States of America. So I'm not going to second guess what happened 250 years ago, but to me, and I come from Maryland. I am right dead set in the middle. We're not large, we're not small. We're right average size state in this country. But I think it's wrong. I think every vote should have the same impact, and you shouldn't have a greater impact because you live in a bigger state on the electoral vote. Every voter should have the same say on who the president of the United States should be.
Hey, Senator, I was wondering if you had any general advice, both in politics, but also just in any argument or debate that you find yourself in, on how you can find common ground and compromise when the other side seems to be so unwilling to like hear you out and is very like standing on their ground. How can we break those barriers down and get everyone to see the bigger picture?
That's a great question, and it's one that there is an answer to. Let me take a legislative branch for 1 second in Congress. You run for Congress in order to get things done. That's why you want to be an elected official, because you want to get policy done. So in order to get policy done, it's in your interest to form coalitions with people who otherwise may not be on your side. So you got to listen to how that can be done. So you got to figure out what the other person wants. On the Paycheck Protection Program, I understood what Marco Rubio was trying to get. I had certain power. He couldn't get it. He couldn't get a bill without me. I couldn't get a bill without him. We had to come together. You also use the power that you have. When I was chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I had a slight disagreement with the Biden administration on a human rights bill. But they had to get things through my committee. And I try to be fair. I don't like to use leverage. But I let Secretary Blinken know he better get my bill passed to make it easier for his nominations to get through our committee. And we were able to get that done. I didn't hold it up, but Secretary Blinken got the message, and I was right on the issues, and we came together. He needed some changes, and we got it done. So you got to get person's attention somehow. If you're sitting down with somebody, all they want to do is cause trouble, they want to scream, they're not going to listen, you can't have a discussion, okay? You can't. But if a person is serious about their position, and maybe in opposition to your position, and they really would like an opportunity to try to convince you of that, give them that opportunity. Don't be afraid that you can't defend yourself, your position. So I think a lot of times we feel there's no possibility for compromise when there is a possibility for compromise. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. I've seen us sit down on gun issues and say, no way, we could get some agreements done on guns. I've seen it on the environment. I saw the whole world come together in Paris in 2015 on climate, where nobody thought that was humanly possible. How could you get a developing state to agree with a developed state on how to use their natural resources? We did. We came to an agreement. So don't give up before you start. But you have to be respectful, and the person you're talking to has to be respectful. If a person's just going to shout, not going to listen to you, no sense sitting down with that person. But the person's going to engage in intelligent debate. You may not change their view, you may not come together, but don't give up before you start. I can tell you that's how the sausage gets made in our political system. And it gets made. And it tastes pretty good at the end of the day if you work on it. Once again, everyone, thank you all for being here. I know it's beautiful outside and you're here. You give me great hope for the future. Thank you.